So where we left off, the train was stopped for about 6 hours on the rails in the middle of nowhere, and finally it gets moving. And it was only supposed to be about another 24 hours before my next stop in Winnipeg. So, yeah, I was just sitting down in the cafe car drinking some coffee, and another fellow traveler comes and sits across from me, and let's call him Jake. And he sits down, and he just has this really intimidating, direct stare right into my eyes, and he just never broke that eye contact. Really, really intense eye contact, and it took me a while. It really put me off for a little bit, but eventually I got used to it. And yeah, he was a pretty cool guy. We sat and we talked for a while. Talked about a few different things, but what really stuck with me is that we started talking about instant coffee because I was drinking it at the time. And he goes on and talks about things I didn't even really think about, like the acids to help keep it fresh and whatnot, and how that tastes bad and how it can really upset your stomach. And he talked more about other alternatives to regular instant coffee using mushrooms to preserve it instead of acids. In particular, he brought up cordyceps. And to me, I only really thought of cordyceps as the nasty fungus that makes zombie ants. But he says, no. Cordyceps in coffee is really good. And he talked about all these different health benefits that I never would have really thought of, and how it tastes better and all these crazy things. I still haven't tried it, but one day I will. Then he goes back to his seat and he invites me to go and find him if I wanted to talk more later. But I sort of hung out and sat around a little while longer. It wasn't really too exciting going through Saskatchewan. There wasn't a whole lot to look at. It was a lot of flatness, a lot of yellow, and sometimes water. Eventually, I made my way up into the domed sort of bubble area where it's just a bunch of windows. It's really nice up in there, and I tried taking some pictures, and I was pretty happy with the way that they turned out. But for the most part, I just kept to myself during this time. I don't really have much to say about Saskatchewan because, yeah, I was just going straight through it. Not really a whole lot going on. I didn't have much of a reason to stop, so I didn't. I eventually got kind of bored and I needed something to occupy myself, and I didn't really want to be just hanging out and playing games on my phone the entire time because that would just be boring. Why would I go on this wild, crazy, once-in-a-lifetime type adventure when I am sticking my head in my phone the entire time? That just wouldn't make any sense. So I went and I talked to the train attendant in the cafe car and asked him if there's a deck of cards that I might be able to use. There were other games that were available for the public use, so maybe there would be something like a deck of cards that I could borrow. And yeah, he looked around for about a minute or two and said that no, there's none of that, but that he could sell me a Via Rail deck of cards, like a souvenir deck of cards, but it was $8. And I thought about it for a while. I mean, my budget was already super fractured from my first couple stops, and I thought about it. Eventually, I did decide to buy the expensive souvenir deck of cards. And the guy was like, "Are you sure? Because at the next stop, you could probably go and buy a better deck of cards for like $2." But I was deciding that I did want the really expensive deck of cards, and I bought it. And I went and found myself a nice table, and I was trying to teach myself how to play solitaire, and that didn't really go anywhere anytime fast. So I went back and I found Jake, and I invited him to come and play some cards with me, and we played a couple games of Crazy Eights, maybe one or two, and then we got bored and he went back to his seat. And around this time I decided that, you know what, yeah, just to ease my nerves a little bit, it was around this time that I decided that I wanted to ease my nerves a little bit, so I went to the cafe area and I ordered a beer. They had a pretty good selection of craft beers from all across Canada, and I just ended up ordering one that I recognized, and it wasn't my favorite, but that's okay. I was enjoying myself, so I sat and I drank it, and I just soaked in the cafe car, and I was just really enjoying myself. It was really an experience that I was enjoying, and yeah, just thinking about it, it brings me back. And it was around this time that, yeah, I started really feeling comfortable and really getting used to the feeling of being on the train. And this is around when I took my official selfie for the day. And yeah, I think that it really does reflect that I was, yeah, getting comfortable and I was enjoying just feeling being on the train. Then I started feeling really greasy. The economy class doesn't offer any sort of shower or any way to really bathe yourself. I mean, there's the bathrooms which have a sink, but you could hardly, you can hardly brush your teeth using these things, let alone, wash your hair. So I did come prepared, sort of. I had a hat, and I hate hats. I don't like hats very much. I don't like wearing hats myself, is all, I suppose. But it was the only way that I was going to be able to hide my grease from the world, so I tied back my hair and I put on the hat, and Jake thought it was cool. He complimented it a couple times, which is all right with me. And then I went back and I was hanging out in the cafe car a little bit more. A little while later, I saw Jake sitting with another fellow, and I went over and I sat with them and started chatting. And Jake explains to me that he ran into this guy back in the Edmonton station, and he seemed like he needed somebody to be with him to sort of keep him together. And I would agree, this guy looked rough. He was bruised and looked battered. He was missing teeth, and poor guy. And he had this sort of slow, slurred speech to him, and he just did not seem like he was all together. A couple screws loose, I guess you could say. And that really sucks. He seemed like a nice enough guy, but definitely has been around some rough stuff in his time. He offered to give us a drink, and I said, yeah, you know what, I could use a drink. And he pulls out this big bottle of Captain Morgan's, and he just takes a giant swig of it right there. And I was like, buddy, you can't be doing that. There's people around here. Do you want to get kicked off this train? And he had this sort of cocky ignorance to him, and he says, what are they gonna do? Then I had this sort of wild idea coming on. I thought, hey, I have instant coffee. You have Captain Morgan's. Maybe we can collaborate a little bit. So I went and I grabbed my instant coffee, and I grabbed my mug, and I made the instant coffee. And I said, hey guys, go get some hot water and make some instant coffee. So they went and they did it as well. And then I said, now we have a vessel. And he went around and he spiked the coffee for everyone, and there we were. We're sitting there with these big mugs of boozy coffee, cheers, and here's the coffee, boom, and laughing and getting totally wasted. And I'm surprised. Like, we were right there in the middle of the cafe car. We weren't even being too sneaky. The only thing we're being sneaked about is getting the liquor in the coffee. And I don't know how the train staff didn't get wise to it and give us shit, but we were having a good time. Eventually, this other guy, the rough-looking one, he started opening up to us. You get a couple drinks in, and you're gonna probably confide in a lot of people. And he sort of starts telling us about his past a little bit more, and he admits that he's been addicted to almost every drug that you could possibly imagine. And every time that it happens and he decides that he wants to try and get clean, he takes the train. He goes from Edmonton to Toronto and back. And apparently that time where it's a lot more difficult for him to get to his drugs really helps him sober himself up. And that was kind of nice. It was, I saw him as this really rough-looking guy, but that sort of made me feel a little bit nicer about the situation, about talking to him. And then we asked him, like, what's going on this time? Why is he doing it this time? And he says, fentanyl. And we thought, oh yeah, you mean like you're worried about like whatever drug you are doing and having fentanyl laced with it, like what, heroin or crack or whatever. And he says, no. He's addicted to fentanyl. He's addicted to just straight up fentanyl. And goodness. We were sitting there like, no way, dude. And then he admitted that he had like a bunch of it in his undercarriage. So it was away from him, but it was there. Like at any stop, he could go and do it, and so that was like, oh goodness, I don't even know how you even get that kind of stuff on there. And then he pulls out this little baggie full of like a white powder, and we're like, hey, whoa, buddy, it's not that kind of party. And he goes, No, no, don't worry, guys. It's just Percocet. And he just puts a whole bunch of it into his coffee and stirs it up. And he goes, yeah, I call this one the roofie colada. And Jake and I they sort of look at each other and laugh like, what the hell, dude? And then it started to get dark, and Jake and this other rough-looking fella, they start trying to scheme and try to think about a way that they can smoke some pot on the train. I don't smoke anything, but this other guy said that he had some sort of filter thing that you could, run a doobie through so it would get no smoke or anything if you're careful, but you could do it. Jake was more on the idea that at the next stop for the smoke break, they'll just go and smoke a joint. So they both started rolling a bunch of joints, and at the next stop, they ran off and went to do that. I just sort of hung out in the cafe car. It was dark, and it was kind of cool, Just looks like a total blast from the past, and I was really enjoying just taking it in still. Like, I'd never seen anything like this before, and I really enjoyed it. And then I went to bed, and as comfortable as it is on the train, I tried my best to get some sleep, and sometime the next day I would be getting into Winnipeg, and I'd be off, and I'd be seeing my family again, and that was really exciting. I think that that's enough for this story. Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate anybody who watches into the end. And thank you. If you made it this far, thanks.